Okay, so Dharma has, as all people know, a lot of symbology. There are a lot of images, symbols that are out there within Dharma, and each having its own idea. So a sadhaka should actually see the symbol and absorb some ideas. That is the sort of an intent with which these should be seen. So there are so many of them. I'm just picking a few just to kind of share how I see them sort of helping us in a sense. So the first one is Padma. Now Padma is sort of everywhere. A Padma comes out of the Nabhi of Vishnu. Brahma is sort of the firstborn from within the Padma. Saraswati sits in Padma. Lakshmi sits in Padma. Equally, even the sort of chakras that we have, the Sapta Chakra, from the Mooladhara to the Sahasrara, all of them are, from Ashtadala Padma to Sahasra Dala Padma. So, Padma is all over the place. So, I think what is the sort of symbology associated with it? And obviously, there are a lot more deeper meanings. But simply put, there are sort of two aspects that are talked about by the gurus, which is Padma by its own nature has what is called as the Vikasana Shakti, which is expansion, and Vyapaka also happens expansion as a result of Padma opening up. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is Sugandha, which kind of spreads out all around. So very clearly, Padma, the sadhaka is actually conveyed in a sense that as the journey starts from the lowest level towards the Paramartha Siddhi, one should effectively open up like the Padma itself. And itself, it's a sort of a strong idea. By just looking at one flower, we can sort of absorb all of that. Equally, of course, from the Vedantic lens, Padma is supposed to grow in a sort of a stagnant pond, and the point is, despite it growing up in a stagnant pond, it is so beautiful, which is not very different from we living in samsara within a sort of a body complex, which may be looked at as a jada padartha. But if we are able to make our journey towards the ultimate, then our journey towards the ultimate is just like the opening up of the Padma itself. So fascinating symbol, which we kind of see right in the beginning. The other one is, of course, diya, which is sort of lighted up in all the homes, all the Hindu houses on a daily basis, and including public functions. You kind of see this being lighted because the sort of the light is always seen as akin to jnana, and knowledge being the sort of the fundamental root for dharma. Lighting up the lamp has been a sort of a standard kriya across. But equally, there are multiple meanings, right? So you have one sort of a wick which is sort of lighted up, and how does one then see that? As you see in the image, there is only one wick, and there we say that the sadhaka should give up the jiva identity, which is a singular identity that a sadhaka has about himself or herself, and move towards light, move towards jnana. So if it's a single wick, then we can say it's jiva burning up its identity as a jiva to become Paramatma. But equally, then if you have two wicks, then we can say that the Prakriti and Purusha aspect, are collectively burned up so that one goes to the Purushottama Sthiti. And if three wicks are lighted up, then we can say that all the three gunas are burned up, so that by burning all of them up, we reach the Nirguna Sthiti, which is again the Paramartha Sthiti. So you can take as many sort of ideas from Dharma, light up the diya in a certain way, and just by visually looking at it, you absorb that idea of dharma, which is sort of fundamentally present in the shastras. The third, the sort of image which is common, and this is all across our country, and including many other sort of civilizations also, there is this idea of grama devata, or more particularly grama devi. Yeah, and in the sort of the beginning of every grama, you have the grava devi standing, and people coming up and sort of on a daily basis bowing down to her as they go about their own duties. And one also wonders then why this idea of Grama Devi comes about. And the answer should actually be very difficult because we covered right in the beginning that Brahma has this aspect of Prakasha and Vimarsha, and Vimarsha likened with Mahadevi, and therefore every manifestation in the Brahmanda is effectively an aspect of the Devi itself or herself. Everything else in this universe is Devi only, because everything that is Vyakta is the Devi. And one of the expressions of this Vyaktata is a Grama or a Nagara. And therefore, by its very nature, since everything that has become Vyakta is a Devi, therefore at the beginning of every village you have a Grama Devi. So it's not very complicated to understand once one connects with this idea of Prakasha and Vimarsha, which we talked about right in the beginning. The fourth thing, which is of course a fundamental and symbol which is used by Hindus all across, is this symbology of Go Mata itself. Now, videos, one or two videos back, I talked about how every pakshi, every vriksha, and every animal also is a pashu is also linked to a display of a certain linked to having affinity with a certain guna. So then the question may come as to what about Gomata itself? Is it Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra? What is Gomata? But I think on a continuing basis, the symbology of Gomata is supposed to be akin to Devi herself, or I would say Mahadevi, and therefore Gomata is seen as the expression of Mahadevi, and we bow down to her because everything in the universe comes from Gomata itself, is the way Gomata is seen. Even from a sort of a Vedantic lens, we see Go as sort of being quiet, detached, eats less, there in the family, takes little, but pretty much the whole family sustains, with presence of Gomata within the house itself. And there are many sort of yogic ideas which are sort of present within Gomata, and we will obviously not go into all of them, but it's not to be seen as having affinity to any guna. It's effectively a nirguna aspect that we are supposed to see when we bow down to the Gomata. Of course, modern literature, there are these explanations that Go is supposed to be very important because ancient India was sort of agricultural, pastoral society. Obviously, there's dependency on the animals for milk and other things, and therefore Gomata is sort of revered that way. There's nothing more to it than that. But that sort of a utilitarian logic should then very much extend to a buffalo or to a goat, which also provides milk, but that has not really been done, right? And buffalo has been sort of equally domesticated in India. I think one of the first countries to domesticate the buffalo is India itself. So clearly there is something more that the rishis have seen within the go, and because they have seen something, that drishti is what has given go a certain status, which is akin to Mahadevi or something that is beyond guna. Yeah, and that sight of Gomata should make us bow down to her with those sort of ideas in mind, that Go is a representation of Mahadevi herself. Okay, lot more symbols. I will pick up something which some of you may find it interesting, which is about the Vivaha itself. Yeah. So again, reading various marriages in the Purana makes sort of one come across multiple variables. So there are marriages where the woman is seemingly dominating. Yeah. So between Atri and Anasuya, for example, it is Anasuya who sort of praised more. Yeah. Atri is also there, great guy, but it's Anasuya who sort of bowed down to in that sense. There are many other cases where there is a man that is shown as dominating. That's what we see, right? When we see these images, we see a man and a woman. Yeah, and where seemingly Lakshmi is pressing the feet of Vishnu, and therefore seemingly one may kind of take it that it's the man that is dominating here. And in a few other cases, we may see the Ardhanarishwara Tattva. And by the way, we started this whole discussion with these three videos. But in this sort of an image, one can see both of them as equal, right? So one can see Draupadi and the Pandavas shown as sort of completely equal. or Nala and Damayanti, where both are seen as completely equal. So there are multiple marriages, yeah. But what is missing in such assessments where we use the terminology that here a woman is dominating, here a male is dominating, or here both are equal, what is missing in these assessment is that one our drishti has sort of a problem there, because effectively all three are great because all three images are rooted in Satchidananda. As we had seen earlier, the sort of external model of domination as the basis to kind of look at these marriages is foolish. In fact, in all marriages, the partners always sort of come across an equilibrium that keeps them rooted to dharma as well as rooted to each other. Yeah. Now, even if you take a sort of a traditional, marriage, typically what is kind of conveyed? What is conveyed is, it starts with the children. They are supposed to bow down to the mother with, they have complete shraddha in the mother, and therefore fully adopt to what the mother tells them. They completely are sort of obedient to whatever the mother tells them. But there is also this parallel thing going on, that equally the mother is also fully devoted to their welfare. So both of them are sort of completely thick one another. Taking it further, mother has full shraddha over her husband and follows every wish of his dutifully. Equally, she knows that, because why is she doing it is because she knows that the husband is also completely focused on the welfare of the family. Taking this further though, is the father free then? So father is the king of the house and everybody else has to follow his diktats. Hold on, that's not the case really. The father is also not free. The father is bound to the word of the guru, yeah, and completely lives a life aligned to the wish of the guru, right? So therefore, in the first image we may think that mother rules. In the second image we may then take it to kind of mean as a father rules. The third image we obviously see that it's the guru who rules, right? But then let's take it further. Is the guru free? No. The guru is bound to the world. The guru is actually bound to the shastra, yeah, and the guru completely lives the life as conveyed in the shastra in terms of all the niyama, karma that is sort of stated there. The guru follows them to the T, and therefore guru is also bound by the shastra. And last, shastra itself is not some random aggregation of the words. The words in the shastra are fully aligned to the paramatma or satya, which we kind of show here also, right? So the key point is, in this whole end-to-end show that we are seeing, everybody has a fantastic relationship with one another, with one clarity of thought, which is that all of them are effectively aligned to satya. And because they are aligned to the satya, they follow these mutual relationships, so that all of them collectively benefit from this sort of a behavioral aspect that they've kind of imposed upon themselves. So therefore, looking at it this way, the ideal family with all its relationships and fidelities is not about who dominates whom. It's all about whether all of them are aligned to dharma and satya. And if that is indeed the case here, the models of domination are sort of embarrassingly shallow, and adopting such a drishti to any story in the Puran is a very prakrita drishti. Such descriptions and such authors who profess such opinions may be set aside by a sadhaka, since they are sort of wasted expressions only. Yeah. So that's the way one should probably look at the Vedic models of marriage in that sense. Let's take another idea, and I sort of, as we move towards the end of this discussion, I come back to the idea of Trimurti again. Yeah, that Trimurti effectively represent the primary devata. So I talked about devata as the enablers, the ones who are experiencing. Devatas effectively are the ones that allow karma to happen, and the primary devata are the Trimurti. Yeah, because all of us begin a karma. Yeah, and when we begin a karma, then we sort of sustain it, and after that sustain, we kind of change to a new karma, right? That's what we do. So fundamentally, every person begins with something. After beginning, they kind of continue that particular karma, then they change and move on to a new karma. So that's the cycle that is happening, and this beginning, this continuation, and this change is nothing else but Trimurti, which is why Brahma, Rudra, and Vishnu are the sort of pradhana devata, and all other devatas are for karma that are much more grosser compared to these primary urges, right? So that's the way Trimurti should be seen. So if you kind of see again in this sort of an image, whenever you see asuras and rakshasas, and I use this symbology because all of them are effectively that only, most of us. So then, whenever you see the first tapasya that is done by a Ravana or a Vibhishana, they always go to Brahma. Yeah. So beginning of a new venture is always started with Brahma. Then many of the Rakshasas also go to Shiva, and typically they ask for something which is a big change from what they were doing earlier. So in those sort of cases, again, when one reads these sort of stories there, they're seeking a change, and that then makes them go to the Rudra. So new karma needs deep tapasya, whereas change of status quo needs special skills, and these skills come from Rudra. So the asuras or rakshasas go there. Yeah. Third, however, are also the asuras and rakshasas who go to Vishnu. Again, what is the purpose? They seek sort of realignment with Dharma. So if you see, everybody is going to Trimurti because Trimurti is the pradhana trigger for everything else that follows. So you seek to do something new, so you kind of do tapasya of Brahma, and once you get the sort of capability, you kind of do everything else that follows, the more sub karmas that we do, which are sub parts of this new karma itself, for which we had done tapasya. But it doesn't end there, right? Because it must be evident that all these primary devata are also aligned to the core, which is Mahadevi. The Mahadevi is indeed the sort of divine mother, the Vimarsha Rupini from where Srishti began. She remains at the center. She is the Satya. She is the Brahma, or the Atma of the Trimurti, which we started the first video with. So therefore, whenever we seek to do something new, we want to change to something different from what we've been doing so far, or we want to kind of make sure that whatever we're doing now, we do it well. All these three devata should be approached with the knowledge that behind these Trimurti is the Mahadevi, who's at the center, and effectively when we bow down to these three devatas, we're actually bowing down to her only. And that then keeps us glued to the Satya, because in all this discussion, I hope one thing becomes very clear again and again. I keep saying that one has to keep the Satya, the Sanatana Satya in mind, whatever we do. Okay? That actually then takes me to what I see this as a sort of a second last slide, which is about the drishti that we see, in terms of how the Shastras are seen. So we have the Rig Veda, we have the Yajur Veda, we have the sort of four Vedas, right? So we have those, then we have the Aranyakas, we have the Brahmana, we have the Aranyaka, and we have the Upanishads. And what is the narrative that is playing out there, which even many knowledgeable people, in fact sometimes even gurus say. So they say that the Vedas are stuti of the Devata, which is right. It is indeed stuti of the Devata. And there are lots of stutis of lots of Devatas. Aranyakas are supposed to be the ritual, yeah, which gives the detailed paddhati of how these sort of kriya should be done. The Brahmanas, the Aranyakas are something like a rebellion. Yeah, that's what we sort of conveyed, that after performing tons and tons of karma, people realized that these karma seem to be meaningless, so they started rebelling, and they started questioning what is the purpose of these karmas, why should we sort of be doing them. And then of course eventually dawned on them that there is something called one God, and that realization is what the Upanishads sort of convey. This is what we told. Does it make sense? Intuitively, even with a little bit of knowledge, one can sort of make out quite easily that this narrative itself has flaws. There is no sort of multiple gods, and there is no sort of rebellion, and there is no sort of one God. I mean, this whole God word itself should ideally be banned completely, when one looks at Dharma itself. So, what is the way this should be seen? And by now, I guess most of you who have sort of understood the primary thrust of the arguments I have been putting so far should get a sense of this. So, in the sense that for all the sadhakas, all the Hindus, or anybody for that matter, what gives meaning to life are the devatas. Yeah. So Vidya is a devata. Okay. Annam, food, is a devata or a devi. Yeah. Indra is a devata. We want to rule. Yeah. We want to sort of become big. We Drishti is a devata, which is Surya, and there are many devatas, right? So all our karma are for knowledge, are for food, are for having the right sort of vision and knowledge. We would like to have name and fame. These are the sort of typical urges for any individual at the beginning stage of their life, and frankly that continues for lives after life, right? So the trigger for the karmas are the devatas, and devatas obviously come about from the sort of sanskaras itself, which we have ingrained. So the key point is, for every individual, the basic driver, of course, are Trimurti, which we touched upon earlier, but to kind of go one level below, it is education, governance, leadership, fame. All of those things become the triggers, right? So therefore we have many devatas and devis, and therefore, because all of them are centered around karma, obviously the corpus of the the samhitas together are referred to as what is called as the karma kanda, because devata and karma are linked, as we have kind of talked about many times. So starting with karma, and because we do multiple karma, there are multiple devatas and devis, and there are multiple sutis. So that's the first stage. Next stage is, of course, the vidhana for the karma. Yeah, so not only should we have these urges for doing a certain karma, we also should know the right vidhana for doing that particular karma. Yeah, no brainer. Then we reflect, which is we do manana and say, okay, I had this urge, I did it in this particular vidhana. Have I done it rightly? Have I sort of thought about this correctly? Have I conceived of this particular karma in an appropriate way? I have got the outcome. How do I make, what do I make out from the outcome? So that's the manana of the very karma that I have done. And as we do manana, eventually, over multiple lives of manana, we come to a stage of jnana, when all the karma, vidhana, and all the manana, all that we have done on this particular karma, resolves itself into realizing that all these are effectively taking me to my own Satchidananda Sthiti. And that realization that Satchidananda Sthiti is my own Swarupa is what is the realization of the Upanishad. It's as simple as that. And what happens after this whole jnana is realized? One stops the karma? Absolutely not. So the karma in a form still continues, but it's done in a form of a manner that it's the jnani who's actually performing the karma. And so we have a lot of these narratives from sort of academicians who say that if Shankaracharya attained this level of jnana, why is he again installing murti in the sort of mandirs? Why is he doing all these kriyas which are contained in the Veda? In fact, one should shed all the kriyas and karma, because one has gone beyond karma, and that is so nonsensical, because nothing stops actually. So Ramana Maharishi was realized, but he used to still stay in the ashrama, he used to still be among other devotees, he used to eat the food along with everybody else, he used to take care of the mata who was present in his ashrama. All the karma was sort of going on, but all those karma are done from a state of paramartha sthiti. So nothing really stops. And if one sees this whole evolution, if you can call it as an evolution in this way, we should therefore obviously move away from this god, multiple gods, one god kind of nonsense, and just understand the corpus in the way that I just kind of presented. If we do that, we have sort of cracked it, and there is nothing more to actually know on this particular piece than what I've just mentioned. Okay, that brings us to the sort of end of bulk of the discussion that we have done. I will just create another small video, 5 minutes, which where I will do the conclusion of all these discussions in a simple way.